Okay, so get ready to put your math skills to work to solve this interesting little math word problem. Matter of fact, let me go ahead and read the problem. It is the following. It takes 1.75 hours to fill a fuel tank. What part of the tank is full after 1 hour? Okay, so that is the question. Feel free to use a calculator, but actually, I want to encourage you to do this problem without the aid of a calculator to see if you still remember how to work with decimals and fractions. But nevertheless, if you have the answer, go ahead and put that into the comment section. I'll show you the correct answer in just 1 second. Then, of course, we'll solve this problem step by step. But before we get started, let me quickly introduce myself. My name is John, and I have been teaching middle and high school math for decades. And if you need help learning math, well, check out my math help program at tcmathacademy.com. You can find a link to that in the description below. And if this video helps you out, or if you just enjoy this content, make sure to like and subscribe, as that definitely helps me out. All right, so let's take one more look at this problem before we see the answer. So it takes 1.75 hours to fill up a fuel tank. So what part of the tank is full after 1 hour? All right, now my question to you is the following. So here is a tank, and it takes, again, 1.75 hours to fill it up. So after 1 hour, do you think that's going to be more or less than half the tank? Okay, so in other words, do you think the answer here, after 1 hour of filling up this tank that takes 1.75 hours to fill up, is our answer going to be more than 50% or less than 50%? So just kind of use some common sense, because if you can kind of have some sort of sense of what the final answer is going to be, well, it's a good check when you actually do see the answer. So hopefully all of you are saying, hey, Mr. YouTube Math Man, this tank should be more than 50% full, because in 1 hour, if it was at exactly 50%, that means it would take 2 hours to fill up, right? So if it took this tank 2 hours to fill up and you're 1 hour in, you would be at the 50% mark. So 1 hour is obviously, you're beyond 50%. So we should have some sort of either percentage or fraction that is more than 1/2. Okay, so let's go ahead and see the final answer. The actual correct answer or solution is 4/7, which of course is a fraction that is bigger than 1/2, right? So if we had 4/8, that is 1/2. So 4/7 is actually bigger. Okay, now if you chose to work with your calculator, you'll have to see if you have a decimal equivalent. So you can take 4 divided by 7. And if you have a decimal or maybe even a percent, that is fine. But this is the correct answer. All right, now if you got this right, we have to celebrate by giving you a nice little happy face and A plus, a 100%, and multiple stars. So you can tell your friends and family that indeed you know how to solve basic math word problems, and you may not even realize that, at least a lot of you out there, that the way to solve this problem, okay, from a mathematical standpoint, the best way is to use something called rates and proportions. This is a big topic in math. And a lot of you might be saying, hey, Mr. YouTube Math Man, I don't even know what that means, but I got the right answer. Well, that is fantastic. But we definitely need to understand these really important topics. Again, rates and proportions. And actually, there's another thing in here, rates, ratios, and proportions. So many math word problems are solved by rates, ratios, and proportions. You definitely got to understand that. And that's exactly how I'm going to solve this particular problem. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into it right now. So again, we have our problem. Always use the rule of three. In other words, read a problem at least 3 times before you kind of start doing anything. And this problem is pretty straightforward, right? So it takes 1.75 hours to completely fill up a fuel tank. So how much of this tank is filled up after 1 hour? Now, one thing that you can do here, just to kind of help your brain start think about this problem, is to model the information. And even though this is a pretty straightforward question, it's not a bad idea to come up with a sketch. And that's what I'm going to do here to kind of explain a very important aspect of this problem. Okay, so here is a fuel tank, and it takes 1.75 hours to completely fill up this tank. Now, how can we kind of think about a full tank? Well, there's a couple different ways we can think about it. So we can say, well, in 1.75 hours, we have a tank that's 100% filled up. So that's one way to think about it. But you can also have one full tank. Okay, so every 1.75 hours, you get one full tank. Now, let's say you were a little bit confused on one representing a complete full tank. Well, what you could do is say this. Well, what about 50% in? So let's just take 1.75 and we'll divide it by 2. And we'll take this 100% and divide that by 2. So 50% of this tank will be filled up in 0.875 hours, right? So we're just dividing by 2 here. So 0.875 hours represents what? 50% of this tank, but that is one half of the tank. Okay, so one half of the tank is filled up in 0.875 0.875 hours. Excuse me. Okay, so what is the point I'm trying to make here? Well, a great way to represent the level of the tank is instead of using percentage, we can just use fractions, right? So the tank is 1/3 filled up, or one half filled up, or 3/4 filled up, or in our case, 4/7, filled up, right? So once we get to like 7/7 or 8/8 or whatever the case might be, well, this is one. So a full tank is one. So anything less than one is going to represent a part of the tank. So I'm going to use fractions to indicate the tank level, but one is going to represent a full tank. That's a really important, kind of concept to review. This kind of relates to other problems in algebra, other type of math, word problems that involve like work and things like that, where one represents one complete unit of work. Okay, so if you kind of understand what I'm talking about, well, that's fantastic. But you could probably still figure this problem out if you use percentages to represent your tank level as well. Okay, so now what are we going to do? Well, we need to make some sort of comparison between time and tank level, right? We have to compare tank level and time. So we have tank level and time. So what is that called? Well, technically, this is called a rate. Okay, what is the rate this particular fuel tank is being filled up? All right, so we're going to measure that by the tank level per unit time, right? So one full tank takes 1.75 hours. So this is what we call a rate in mathematics. When we have a fraction and the numerator and denominator are two completely different units of measure. Let's do a fast review for those of you that forgot what a rate is. A rate, a ratio, and proportion. I just can't help myself, so let me just do this real quick. All right, so rates and ratios, these two things right here are nothing more than fractions, and proportions are two equal fractions or two equal rates and ratios. So real quick, a good way to kind of review what a rate is, of course we're dealing with one right now, is let's take a vehicle, right? Like a car goes 60 miles per hour. This means it goes 60 miles per every 1 hour, right? 60 miles per 1 hour. So we're comparing distance, which is of course miles, to time. Okay, so the numerator and denominator units of measure are completely different. That is a rate, and that's what we have right here, right? So it's kind of like the speed, how fast this tank is being filled up. All right, now what we have over here is an example of a ratio. So maybe we have one teacher to 20 students. So a teacher to student ratio, that's kind of a good ratio, or a gear ratio. That's another example. But here, oftentimes schools will indicate, how dense or how, populated their school is. They'll say, hey, this is how many teachers we have per student. So they'll give you the teacher to student ratio. So if it's 1 to 20, that means there's one teacher per 20 students, or 220 students. So notice that when we talk about ratios, we use the word to, like gear ratio, or a teacher to student ratio. When we're talking about rates, we use the word per. Okay, 60 miles per hour, or tank level per unit time. Okay, so that's kind of a giveaway. But now some of you might be saying, "Hey, Mr. YouTube Math Man, teachers and students, they're two different units of measure. So why is this not a rate?" Well, teachers and students are human beings. Although I know some of you don't think that teachers are actually people, indeed we are. Okay, so we're comparing people with people, and over here, obviously, tank level has nothing to do with hours. All right, so really important stuff. And now that we have some sort of rate to kind of represent how fast this tank is being filled up? Well, we can solve this problem, but we're going to need a proportion. I'll talk about that here in a second. Again, a proportion is two units, two equal rates, ratios, or proportions. All right, so again, the information in the problem is the following, right? So one full tank takes 1.75 hours. So our question is this: what is the tank level? We don't know what the tank level is, so we'll have this variable x represent this tank level after 1 hour. So what is the tank level after 1 hour? Well, whatever the speed it's going to take to get to this level is going to take obviously 1 hour to get to this particular level. It's the same speed that's going on here. So these rates are the same. In other words, these are in proportion. Okay, so this tank is filling up completely. It takes 1.75 hours. Well, the speed is the same over here to get to whatever level this is in 1 hour. So hopefully this makes sense. In other words, these rates are in proportion. Okay, it's proportional. Okay, so now that we understand that, what we can do here is build ourselves a lovely proportion. Okay, so it takes 1.75 hours to completely fill up a tank. After 1 hour, how much of that tank is going to be filled up? Now notice here, what we have is two fractions, and I'm saying this fraction is equal to this fraction. So again, this is what we call a proportion. And we got to be very careful here because when we build these two equal fractions, we have to make sure that our numerators and denominators represent the same thing. So our numerator up here represents tank level, and x is also the tank level that we're looking for. And then, of course, the denominator down here is hours, and the denominator over here is hours as well. Oftentimes, students or people, when they're solving these problems, they'll have one fraction with tank level or hours, and over here, hours and tank level. That's a very common mistake. So make sure that you have the same units of measure in the same position. Okay, so now we have, whoops, I didn't want to do that. We have ourselves a proportion, which again is two equal fractions. But let's just review something very, very critical about proportions, and we'll use a nice, easy example. Okay, so again, by definition, a proportion is one fraction that equals another fraction. So here is a simple example. 1/2 is equal to 5/10. There's all different sorts of fractions that 1/2 is equal to. But when you have two equal fractions, i.e. a proportion, what you can do is something called the cross product, because the cross product in a proportion is equal. In other words, 1 times 10 over here is equal to 2 times 5. The cross product in a proportion is equal. Okay, so 2 times 5, of course, is 10, and 1 times 10 is 10. All right, so when we solve proportions, we're going to use the cross product. In other words, we're multiplying across. This is one of the most important things that you need to know, one of the most important properties you need to know about proportions. If you remember this one, you'll be okay, but there are other properties about proportions that you'll learn in courses like geometry. Okay, but let's go ahead and now think about the cross product to solve this problem. And if you're saying, wait, Mr. YouTube Math Man, are we going to cross multiply like this? Well, indeed, that's exactly where we're going. So let's go ahead and take the next step and kind of just focus in on this proportion. We know that we have to use the cross product to solve, and what we're looking to do here is solve for x. So we're going to be using some basic algebra. Now, at this point in the problem, if you didn't have a calculator, you're going to want to start thinking about changing this 1.75 to a fraction, a mixed number fraction. It's just easier to work with a fraction in my opinion, but let's go ahead and do that right now. Okay, so 1.75 is the same thing as what? Well, 0.75 is the same thing as 3/4, so this is 1 3/4, right? 0.75 is equal to the fraction 3/4. So 1.75 hours is the same thing as 1 3/4 hours. Now, I'm going to go ahead and drop the units of measure because we're already kind of set up. All of our information here is in the right position. So we have hours down here and tank level up here in the numerator. So we're just going to focus on the algebra we need to do in order to solve this problem. And again, I'm going to go ahead and do this in a way that does not require a calculator. All right, so we have 1 over 1 3/4 is equal to x over 1. So here we have a mixed number fraction. it's always better to work with an improper fraction. So when the denominator is bigger than the numerator, that's a proper fraction. When you have the numerator bigger than the denominator, like in this case, this is an improper fraction, and of course something like this is a mixed number fraction. So we want to go ahead and change 1 and 3/4 to an improper fraction. How do we do that? Well, it's going to be 4 times 1, which is 4, plus 3, or 7/4. Okay, so we're going to do that in just 1 second, but first you're going to do this, which is hit that subscribe button. I definitely need your help. Been on YouTube for a long, long time. I love teaching math. Every day I'm posting videos. And to me, it's not a chore. It's what I love to do. It's what I've been doing for decades. And, my whole passion is to try to make math, clear and understandable. Now, a lot of you know this stuff, and that is fantastic, but a lot of you don't. So, what's the best way to learn something you don't understand? Well, I'm going to tell you from experience, if somebody tries to learn math really quick, and they're like, hey, Mr. YouTube Math Man, I got to take a test tomorrow. Just teach me this. I got 5 minutes because my, Netflix is going to be starting and I got to get ready for my test. I got 5 minutes. So teach me real quick. Okay, I got it. I'm going to go take my test. And then guess what? I have a C minus on my results, right? That's not good. You can't rush learning mathematics. There's just too much to learn. Now a lot of people they think and kind of like, oh yeah, I can just, get through it real quick. You got to be very, very careful. If you see a program or you see some sort of ad, hey, learn math super fast, you can get a basic sense of math. I'm not saying you can't, but if you truly want to master and grasp and assimilate, and fully comprehend mathematics, it takes time. It takes years. Okay, so don't give up is what I'm saying. But get yourself some great instruction. So if you need some serious math help, check out my main math courses. You'll find links to all those in the description of this video. Also, my YouTube videos are very comprehensive, and hopefully you're getting some value out of this. And if you are, hit that subscribe button and that notification bell so you can get my latest videos. All right, so let's go ahead and finish this up. So we have 1 over 1 and 3/4 is equal to x over 1. So x is going to be the tank level after 1 hour. So we're going to solve this basic proportion using the cross product and some basic algebra. All right, so we're going to take this x, I'm going to multiply by 1 and 3/4, and then take this 1 times 1. So 1 times 1 is 1. X times 1 and 3/4 is going to be, of course, 1 and 3/4 times x. So let's go ahead and see that right now. All right, so here we go. Now at this point, as I indicated, we're going to want to change this mixed number fraction to an improper fraction. You could have done that earlier, or we can do this right now. So 1 and 3/4 is going to be equal to what? 4 times 1 is 4, plus 3 is 7/4. So let's write that here. So 7/4 x is equal to 1. Okay, so here is a basic algebraic equation. And how do we solve for x? Easy, we're going to divide both sides of the equation by 7/4, but that is kind of a harder way to do or to think about how to solve this equation. Really, the easiest way to solve this equation is to think about what do I need to multiply 7/4 by in order to get a 1? Okay, because I'm looking to solve for x or 1x. So anytime you have a fraction in front of a variable and you want to solve, the easiest way to think about this is to flip the fraction upside down. That's called the reciprocal, because when I multiply the reciprocal times the fraction, what do you get? Well, you're going to get 1, right? 4 times 7, 28, over 7 times 4, 28, and all these factors are going to cross cancel. So that is going to be 1. But if you multiply this side of the equation by 4 over 7, you got to multiply the other side as well. All right, so 4 sevenths times 7/4 is going to be 1 or just x, 1x or x. And of course, 1 times 4 sevenths is 4/7, which is the correct answer. Again, 4/7 or 4 sevenths is better than 50%. And we would expect that much because it only takes 1.75 hours to fill up the entire tank, right? So after 1 hour, we should be, at a level higher than 1/2, which would be what? 4/8. Or, you just got to understand, hopefully, fractions and be like, oh, yes, 4 sevenths is a fraction that is greater than 1/2. Okay, so hopefully this all makes sense. Again, a lot of you out there probably could have figured this out 1, 2, 3 and got the right answer. But here's the thing. This is a pretty easy problem. Okay, hopefully this is easy. Some of you might have been like, "Oh, this is kind of hard," but here's the thing: you could have reasoned through with some basic math or some common sense to get the right answer, and that's very good. And you should feel proud of yourself. But you really do want to understand the mathematical concepts and principles here because when you get into more challenging math, word problems, and more challenging mathematics, if you don't understand these concepts of what a rate is or a ratio or a proportion or the cross product, you're going to have a tough time later on. So again, it's one thing to solve a basic math word problem by just kind of reasoning through. That's fantastic. But if you truly want to learn math, start understanding these principles. Now, by the way, too, if you are not a math student and you're like, you know what, Mr. YouTube Math Man, you're kind of motivating me to maybe relearn some math skills that I lost way back in the 1970s or 80s or the 60s, well, check out my Math Skills Rebuilder course. You'll find a link to that in the description of this video. In this particular course, I will teach you basic math, algebra, geometry, even some basic trigonometry and some probability and statistics. But anyways, for those of you that are in a specific course like Algebra 1 or Algebra 2, I teach this stuff in those courses as well. Okay, so with all that being said, I definitely wish you all the best in your math adventures. Thank you for your time and have a great day.